Yes, Corpus was very special for me because I came from a perfectly ordinary grammar school, and they didn't teach Latin, and this was during the war, and so the masters were not very good, and so I had to have extra Latin tuition in order to get into the college. And I fully remember my audition here, which was taken in conjunction with the King's Organ Scholarship and the Clare Organ Scholarship, and it was Maurice Ord who was the Director of Music at King's at that time, and I can remember every minute of it. It was one of the most exciting experiences of my life, and having got onto the shortlist, one of the tests was to accompany King's choir in the chapel, and it was Mozart's Lacrimosa, and I didn't know it at all in those days, and I started playing it, and after 2 or 4 bars the sound of the choir came over the top of the organ loft, and it was one of the most magical moments of my life, if it hadn't been so important. And then finally Boris Ord in his rooms came to see us 5 candidates, and he said, I'm giving the King's Organ Scholarship to Mr. Popplewell, the Clare Organ Scholarship to Mr. Brimer, and I just couldn't stand the tension anymore, so I looked out of the window, and the Corpus Organ Scholarship to Mr. Bertalot. I thought, oh. And that, of course, was one of the most wonderful moments of my life, and coming here, it more than lived up to the thrill of being here and having supervisions with Boris Ord and Professor Patrick Hadley. We had Billy Graham here for the first term when I played for his mission in Great St Mary's. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh came, and that was only 2 years after the coronation. And I saw Albert Schweitzer get an honorary doctorate, so I thought, if that's happening in my first term, I may as well stay. Yes. And we had, as you have these days, you have choral scholars, and I can remember particularly 4 choral scholars of my day. One, Michael Tubbs, who was the Director of Music of the Royal Shakespeare Company. Another one who became an executive of ICI in Australia. A third who became a missionary in Nigeria, which was wonderful. And a third who became the Dean of an English cathedral. And so to mix with people like that, day in and day out, was an enormous privilege. And I learned so much. And it was because of Corpus, and particularly Geoffrey Styler, who was the precentor here, when I applied for the post of Organist of St Matthew's, Northampton, which was in those days the leading musical and artistic church in the country, with a painting by Graham Sutherland and the statue by Henry Moore, and Benjamin Britten had written music for it, so I applied for that, and it was Geoffrey Styler who wrote to the rector there, and it was through what he said that I got the job. And it wasn't until only a very few years ago that I learnt that Geoffrey Styler also wrote to the Dean of Blackburn Cathedral when I applied for that, and it was through what he said that I got the job there. And so I owe Corpus more than I can ever repay, and may the same be true of all undergraduates who come here.